out because she's history. They've, as he pointed out, they closed the books on Clinton, on the Clintons. They're done, and she'll never be around again. She's not coming back in 2020, and it's over. Period. Genevieve Wood.
The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas.
So, I don't know.
I think the stars are bigger and brighter than they were 24 hours ago.
Boy, I'd say I know you weren't among this group of pundits, but I have to tell you, it was really weird watching all the people in the media. I don't care what station you were watching, all look like somebody just strangled their puppies in front of them. It was amazing to me.
It was as soon as he won Florida, and you could tell North Carolina was becoming more and more likely. I started flipping around channels because I didn't want to miss any meltdown that might be occurring on any of them, And it was true. I mean, it didn't matter really. I mean, even Fox, which is obviously more conservative than the other news channels, they were surprised. Look, I think a lot of people are surprised. I mean, I will be honest. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised he won. I didn't know he was going to win. I was hopeful. But the fact that it looks like he's going to win by even larger margins than I think, frankly, even maybe the Trump campaign thought was going to actually occur. I mean, I had heard yesterday that they were really banking on Michigan because they had decided a couple of weeks ago they really didn't think they did have a true shot in Pennsylvania. And now here we are this morning, and Pennsylvania is the one in the winners column, and we're still waiting to see what happens in Michigan. It may end up there as well. But listen, this was the American people spoke. I don't think there's really any other way to spin it.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. And of course, even if you look at the numbers compared to 2012, it appears that Trump outperformed Romney in every category. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, he got at least the same amount of the Hispanic vote. It may turn out that he got more. I mean, after all the hand-wringing over that, people said, well, they still aren't good numbers. I'm like, well, considering how much was up against him, I think he did pretty darn well. He ended up winning majority among white women. We're still waiting for all the numbers to come out to really see who voted where and what. But there's no way he would have won if he didn't bring in more people together. And clearly, her coalition did not turn out. That's what happened on her side of the aisle.
And you know what really was amazing to me, because and everybody started talking about, had all these models, and I kept on insisting that there was no such thing as a model in this particular election cycle for many reasons. But I did notice, like, you take Florida, for instance, and this is really kind of this happened in Missouri too, where you had Miami-Dade. And, of course, in the traditional sense, these population centers, these urban population centers, would always carry a Democrat. And they were banking on Philadelphia, again, for Pennsylvania. They were banking on Detroit for Michigan. But what they didn't bank on was every house outside of the urban areas. And every house outside of those urban areas voted for Trump. I mean, you look at this map in Florida, and it's all red, and you had voter turnout that was unbelievable in these areas, and they just swamped the urban votes.
Look, I mean, people have been saying, including Trump himself, for months, there's something going on out there. And the question was, would that something going on turn out on Election Day? And it did. And it didn't maybe show up in all the polls, and maybe it clearly didn't show up in some of the exit polls. People weren't talking to those folks. A lot of pollsters this morning, I'm sure, wondering what's going on in the world. But the reality is people turned out. And, they always say at the end of the day, elections are about turnout. That is very true. I just think this one was so different because there was so much talk about he didn't have a turnout machine. Hillary's got this massive turnout machine. You know what? That was true. I mean, the RNC, I think, did have a much better system than they did 4 years ago. But nonetheless, even though she had millions of people knocking on doors, it didn't get enough people to the polls because at the end of the day, people decided we do want to change the way Washington works, and we're going with somebody who's not from there, not of there, and we think it's actually going to make a difference. And that message is what turned people out, not a machine. I think it was the message and the sentiment among the American people.
Right, which blows out of the water another myth, and that is the myth of the ground game. Because what happens is all the pundits out there apparently are trained to talk about like three things. And so one of them is the ground game, and they're always when they have nothing else to say, they talk about, oh, it's important to have a ground game. They don't even probably know what it is, but they've heard it somewhere, and the ground game means nothing. I mean, ultimately, obviously you have to get out the vote, and I get all that, but this ground game stuff, that's another thing that ought to be thrown into the trash heap.
Well, I think, again, I think the ground game is important, but at the end of the day, what matters more is what do people really want to go vote
right.
for? And I think people really they didn't need somebody to knock on their door or give them a phone call to go say, yeah, I want to go change the way Washington works. That's been his message from the get-go, and that was the ground game he needed. That's been the ground game that's been going on through the primaries, now has gone on through the general election. It's huge. I mean, as Donald Trump might say.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, and also all the writing on the wall has been, and articles have been about the future of the Republican Party and all that. It's going to be in disarray after the election is over. And what's the talk this morning? The disarray of the Democrats, and where are they, and who's their new leader, and all. I mean, it's amazing what a difference an election can make, and what a difference I would just say the American people can make when they stand up. And it's exact. I mean, and the Senate. I mean, I'm sure you guys are happy in Missouri with Roy Blunt.
Yeah.
And look at Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. And it doesn't even look like it's going to turn out to be that close. And he was considered dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Really, really amazing.
Well, because all the pundits said he was. And it was interesting how, the guys who were hurt most, or actually who were just squeaking by, were the ones who were not supportive of Trump. So Mark Kirk, of course, lost it, although I think that would have been hard for him either way. And Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, I mean, he won, but it was not a foregone conclusion he would have. So, yeah, I mean, and now we have since 1928 a House led by Republicans, a Senate led by Republicans, and a White House with a Republican in it. So pretty incredible.
And in the next cycle, Republicans have a much better shot of winning the Senate than they did this time around. So, I mean, it will depend on what Donald Trump does as president and what the Congress does over the next 2 years, but they could certainly enlarge that lead in the Senate.
Yeah, and it's funny how it's interesting to see. I'm not a psychologist, but it's interesting to see. It seemed like the more the media was so obvious in its opposition to Donald Trump, and the more some people in the Republican Party were so unusually aggressive towards Trump, the more people dug in and were convinced Trump was the guy. So I think whatever they were trying to do to him backfired in a weird way.
Well, no, you're right, Jamie. I have to say, as somebody who's inside D.C. and is so welcoming of this change, I mean, the fact that literally so much was against him. The media was against him. The establishment was against him. So many other people in his own party who were running were either distancing themselves or outright saying they were against him. He had no former Republican president out on the stage campaigning for him. He didn't have any of that. I mean, it was just nothing but everything against him, and he still won. And he won. It looks like he won big.
Yeah.
So I think that what that says to me is what a strong message people wanted to send, and that is. It's really encouraging.
They were certainly ready. All right, Genevieve Wood, always good to talk to you. At Genevieve Wood, dailysignal.com, heritage.org. Have a great rest of your week.
Same to you, sir.
Take care.
Thank you for making Suntrup Kia the top